What's up, everybody? This is Josh. Welcome to my evening rant. I wanted to bring up a couple of issues that, first off, I want to be honest, and that's why I want to make this video. You know, I make a lot of videos talking about, life is great, life is grand, think positive and whatnot, but I think it's just as important to be realistic in the sense that, I always say that I fuck up. I make mistakes all the time. I'm only human. I don't try to play this floaty, perfect person, because there are no floaty, perfect people, And it's just a mirage to think that the ideals that we have exist, in people, because we only see people for what we think they are. So, I try to be the best person I can. I try to be as kind as I can, as reasonable as I can. I try not to be rude to people. Somebody made a comment this morning, or maybe yesterday, on one of my videos about how I made a comment about how I made kind of a gesture about this dude at the coffee shop who had ordered like 12 coffees, in rush hour. And she said that she had heard these two ladies spouting off at the store. And she stepped in and basically told him to shut up, Lady told her to fuck off and whatnot, but that she was stepping in and kind of voicing her opinion because these two people were acting like idiots. And there's a certain degree of stay out of stuff and a certain degree of step into things. And when it comes to self-defense, that's what I really want to make this video about. And try to stick to the subject this time because I'm going to get big while I make it. But to what degree do you defend yourself, when people are giving you shit? But first off, I want to say I have a guilty pleasure. No, not cannabis. Cannabis is not guilty. My guilty pleasure, I wouldn't say it's a guilty pleasure because that's wrong. That's a bad judgment. I take a certain degree of pleasure in fucking with people. And I was really been thinking it through tonight because there's this douchebag that came and commented on one of my videos, and I noticed it didn't show up on the video, and I realized it's because I'd already muted him, and I didn't even realize. Then I looked a little deeper, realized that I had muted his other channel instead. Somehow it came across the comment, and it was this dude who had been named Joseph Turcotte, who had changed his name to musical fucking some shit, I don't know. And he decided that, that I'm a cult member. And this was all based on my comments and back and forth with people. I think it would be Archaic and Penny Dragons, and a couple of people out there who have certain occult style, interests. And I've never personally gone and seeked out their channels. It's just that I've met them through each other. So, once in a while I'll watch a video and comment. This person was under the impression that I was in some cult, whatnot. At first I just said, whatever, dude, you're just a dumbass. But he just kept coming back, And I started thinking about the Mac syndrome, with Eric. And how that gets with people like that are just rude and just won't shut up. This guy got to the point where he just looked like such a douche. He actually, said he'd shoot me. He said this twice. He should be shot. And I started thinking, this is exactly like Mac. This is exactly how people get when they feel cornered. Because I basically called his bluff. I said, I'm not a cultist. I'm not in a cult. Why can't you just admit that you were wrong and move on? But he couldn't. He couldn't get past his fucking, arrogance. And I had to call him out on it and make him look like a dick. And I was finding certain pleasure in watching him squirm because he really had nothing to say. He kept just saying the same shit, but to the point where he was capitalizing, fuck you. Once a person gets to the point where they're typing in caps and saying fuck you and direct things like that, it's just ludicrous. It's okay, this guy's totally lost it, So my question would be, what degree do we take pleasure in these things, Is it okay to fuck with people who won't stop fucking with you? Now, guys like Mac, that was a totally different thing altogether. The guy's a total idiot. You know, I won't even deal with him. But guys like say Chris, you know, Truth Speller, I get along well with him. When we're getting along, we still comment on each other's stuff, but we've had some arguments and spats about religion in the past. But in the end, the point is that we both have points to say. We both have things to back up what we say. And certain people come around like this dude, and he's got nothing to say at all. You know, he's just like, you're a cultist. So, okay, so how? And then in the end he says something like, well, I'd be making videos, or I said, dude, get real, I'm just a guy making videos about life, get over it. Or I said, you should try it sometime, get one of your own. And he got all huffy. He said, I wouldn't waste my time on YouTube making videos about life, I'd make videos about how to help people. I go look at his channel, and all he's doing is just insulting people all the way down. And so I start thinking, you know, do we put up with these kind of people? You know, do we let these people trample on each other? And it's not just YouTube. You know, it's just an example. That was this happens every day when I go to places and I see people fucking just acting like idiots. It's what about the person who's yelling at his kid in the store? You know, just screaming at him, calling him a piece of shit, whatever. You know, do you step up and say, hey man, you're a dick? You know, obviously most people don't say anything. They say, you know, that's not my business. That's not my kid. Well, no, but you're gonna grow up with that kid in your world. You want them to know how to be a good person, and letting people treat each other like that. There's like this certain line that each person walks. I'm not saying that, you know, I should or shouldn't step in. I'm just saying each person determines to what degree they're willing to defend themselves and others. If I see people being mistreated, I like to step up and try to help, especially if they can't defend themselves. I've been in some situations where I've seen people getting teased that are ignorant, that can't defend themselves, that have really good opinions and ideas, but just can't express it right. And, you know, other people will come in and take advantage of that and try to make themselves look better and cooler. You know, it's just the world we live in. So I've chosen, you know, obviously the mute button on people like that. If when it comes to YouTube, you know, I just mute the guy. It makes it a lot easier. I don't have to see his comments or worry about it. Be aware though, if you do mute somebody, you can't unmute them very easily. It's very, very difficult. I haven't been able to do it. Unfortunately, I muted a couple people that I want to unmute, and now I can't. But anyway, I guess that's all I got for now. I don't want to go on and on about this. It's just, I think it's an important issue. Because I've accused people in the past of being too harsh on others. And sometimes I've said, you know, get over it, you know, the guy's a douchebag, just fucking move on. But I understand that deep inside you want to get your fucking voice heard, you know. You want people to know that they're assholes. My personal metaphor for it is driving and using your horn. Some people use it, some people don't. I've seen some people who will have somebody slam on their brakes in front of them for no reason or cut them off, and they'll never use their horn. I'll be honest, I'm a very easygoing person, but I use my horn at least once every time I drive. It's like I'm not stressed out, I'm not angry. I'm just letting people know, hey, you did a douche thing. And people always do stupid things. And I feel like if the more people let people know, you know, there's some cities where they honk all the time, but in Portland people don't honk very often. It's not very common. I mean, I know there's, you see those movies with LA where everybody's or New York where everybody's honking. I don't know if it's really like that. I've never been to New York, but I've heard it is in some spots. And it's like, why are people honking? Well, they're frustrated. It's not because they're honking at each other to move or anything. Portland doesn't do that. So we don't even use our horns when somebody does something dumb. But anyway, I do. And I find myself feeling like, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I really speak my mind? Tell the person they stopped at a green light, you know? I'm not very patient when it comes to foolishness. And that's another one of my faults, you know, that perhaps I need to work on. You know, being impatient with people and also pushing people's buttons. But I'll be honest, I never push people's buttons that are my friends on YouTube, people that I associate with. I rarely do that. You know, it's like 2 or 3 people a year that I really push at and do it on purpose. Like, I wasn't trying to do it when I was debating religion with certain people, and not with Chris. You know, I wasn't trying to pick at him personally. Like, I don't do that to people in general. It's only when people accuse me of things that they have absolutely no backing for. And I feel like that's righteous. Each one of us has the right to defend ourselves against people who are accusing us of things that are totally incorrect. I mean, not that you have to care. Obviously, if a person accuses me of being in a cult, and this person's hiding behind their computer while I'm actually out here, you know, vocalizing and talking about all kinds of random things that have nothing to do with cultism, they don't know what they're talking about. And I know that, and they know that, but they can't quite admit it. So you have to call them out on it, you know. You can only take so much. You can't put up with people's stupid accusations all the time. Some really, really tasty presidential kush is what I'm smoking right now. Reminds me of the great white shark, which is kind of like a white widow breed with the white widow and super skunk. But very similar to that tasty weed. So anyway, that's my rant. There are some douchebags out there. I imagine, I think it was weird, the reason why I mentioned that Joseph dude is I can't see any of his comments on my page, but somehow they showed up on my feed on Google Plus. I don't know what I did, if I muted him on one and not the other, or how that shit works. It's confusing, there's too much crap to deal with on there. But I just like to mute the people who are annoying, and just get over with it. But once in a while I like to pick at somebody, and I can't help it. But I'm working on it. I'm only human. I think you can relate to that. Lobo, you can relate to that, dude. You're a reptilian. Peace.